Hi guys, today we are learning how to convert customary measurements. We can use rates and proportions to convert customary units. We will be using our star resource chart to create proportions to solve for customary measurements. There are two ways we can convert customary measurements. The first is by setting up a proportion. We will write a proportion using a ratio of equivalent measures. First, we will write a unit fraction. Our problem to the left says to convert 24 pints to cups. On our star resource chart, we see that 1 pint equals 2 cups. Since our two units are cups and pints, we've created a unit fraction with cups in the numerator and pints in the denominator. Our second step is to set up a proportion. The first ratio or fraction in our proportion will be the conversion factor that we get from the measurement chart. That is 1 pint equals 2 cups. The second fraction or ratio we get from our proportion is the missing quantity and the quantity given in the problem. So in the problem, it tells us we need to convert 24 pints to cups, what we don't know. So we'll label that C. Our third step is to cross multiply. So we multiply 1 times C, and that equals 2 times 24. Our last step is to solve for the unknown quantity, for our variable. Since C is already by itself, we do not need to divide on both sides of our equation, so C equals 48, or 24 pints is equal to 48 cups. The second way we can convert customary measurements is by multiplying or dividing. If we have a bigger unit and we're moving to a smaller unit, we will multiply. And if we have a smaller unit and we're moving to a bigger unit, we will divide. So we have an example down below. It says to convert 24 pints to cups. Pints is a bigger unit, and we're moving to cups, a smaller unit, so we will multiply. On our conversion chart, we see that 1 pint equals 2 cups. So we will multiply our 24 pints by 2, and that equals 48 cups. Now let's solve some guided practice problems together. In our first guided practice problem, we need to figure out how many pints are in 6 quarts. So I will set up a proportion, quarts to pints. And on our star resource chart, we see that 1 quart equals 2 pints. Then we know from our problem that we have 6 quarts, and we are needing to figure out how many pints that is. So we have set up our proportion. Next, we will cross multiply and solve. We'll multiply 1 times x, and that equals 6 times 2, which is 12. Since x is already by itself, our answer is 12. So 6 quarts equals 12 pints. Our second guided practice problem says 72 inches equals how many feet? So our two units are inches and feet. We'll set up our unit fraction, and then next we'll set up our proportion. On our STAR resource chart, we see that 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. So when we have 72 inches, we need to know how many feet that is. So we've set up our proportion. Now we will cross multiply. 12 times x equals 1 times 72, which is 72. We will need to divide by 12 on each side to get x by itself, and when we do, x equals 6. So 72 inches is equal to 6 feet. For our next two guided practice problems, we will solve using the second method, which is either to multiply or divide. So I will look at my units. I have pounds and ounces. So pounds is a bigger unit, and ounces is the smaller unit. So when we're going from big to small, we will multiply. In our problem, it says 5 pounds equals how many ounces? So we will multiply the 5 pounds times how many ounces are in a pound. On our STAR resource chart, we see that 16 ounces are in a pound. So we will multiply the 5 pounds times 16 to figure out how many ounces that would be. 5 times 16 is 80. So there are 80 ounces in 5 pounds. In our last guided practice problem on this page, we see 33 feet equals how many yards? Feet is our smaller unit, and we're moving to a bigger unit, yards, so we will need to divide. We have 33 feet, and we will need to divide by how many feet are in a yard. On our STAR resource chart, we see that 3 feet are in 1 yard. So we will divide 33 by 3, and when we do, our answer is 11. So there are 11 yards in 33 feet. Now let's solve a few word problems together. Our first problem says Mrs. Burns needs 6 cups of cream to make ice cream. How many pints of cream does she need to buy to make the ice cream? So we are going to first write our unit fraction. We have cups and pints as our 2 units, and next we're going to set up a proportion. On our STAR resource chart, we see that 2 cups equals 1 pint. Then if Mrs. Burns needs 6 cups, we need to figure out how many pints that would be. So next we will cross multiply. 2 times x equals 1 times 6, which is 6. And now we'll solve to get our variable by itself. We'll divide both sides of our equation by 2. And when we do, we find that x equals 3. So Mrs. Burns would need 3 pints of cream to make ice cream. In our second problem, we will use the second method, which is determining whether or not we need to multiply or divide. It says Haley has 48 inches of ribbon. How many feet of ribbon does she have? So we're moving from inches, a smaller unit, to feet, which is a bigger unit. So we will need to divide. She has 48 inches, and we will divide that by how many inches are in 1 foot. There are 12 inches in 1 foot from our STAR resource chart. So when we divide 48 by 12, we get 4 feet. So Haley has 4 feet of ribbon. Sometimes we will need to set up multiple proportions in order to convert customary measurements. In our first guided practice problem, we are trying to convert 24 pints into gallons. On our STAR resource chart, we see that pints can be converted to quarts and quarts can be converted to gallons, but pints cannot be directly converted to gallons. So we will have to set up 2 proportions to solve this problem. In our first proportion, we will convert pints to quarts. So setting up our unit fraction, pints to quarts, and now we will write our proportion. From our STAR resource chart, we see that 2 pints is equal to 1 quart. And then we need to figure out how many quarts 24 pints is. So we will cross multiply to solve. 2 times x equals 1 times 24 is 24. Next, we will divide on both sides of our equation to get x by itself, and x equals 12. So we know we have 12 quarts, and next we can convert quarts to gallons to get our final answer. So in our second unit fraction, we'll have quarts in our numerator and gallons in our denominator. Then we'll set up our proportion. From our resource chart, we see that 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon. So if we have 12 quarts, we need to figure out how many gallons that would be. So next we will cross multiply. 4 times x is equal to 1 times 12, which is 12. We'll divide by 4 on both sides of our equation to get x by itself, and x equals 3. So 24 pints equals 3 gallons. Next, we see 72 inches, and we need to convert that to yards. On our conversion chart, we can convert from inches to feet, and then from feet to yards, but we are unable to convert directly from inches to yards. So again, we will have to set up multiple proportions to solve. So we'll first convert inches to feet and set up our proportion. There are 12 inches in 1 foot. So if we have 72 inches, we can figure out how many feet that is. Next, we'll cross multiply. 12 times x equals 1 times 72, which is 72. And then if we divide by 12, on both sides, we will get x by itself, and x equals 6. So we know it's equal to 6 feet, and then we can convert from feet to yards. So our second unit fraction we'll have feet in the numerator and yards in the denominator, and then we'll set up our proportion. There are 3 feet in 1 yard. So if we have 6 feet, we can figure out how many yards that is. Next, we will cross multiply. 3 times x is equal to 1 times 6, which is 6. We'll divide by 3 on both sides to get x by itself, and x equals 2. So 72 inches is equal to 2 yards. For our last 2 problems, we will solve using the second method, determining if we need to multiply or divide. So we see 1 ton, and that equals a certain amount of ounces. Tons is a bigger unit, and we're moving to a smaller unit with ounces. So when we move from big to small, we need to multiply. So we have 1 ton, and from our star resource chart, we can move from tons to pounds, and then from pounds to ounces, but we can't move directly from tons to ounces. So we will convert first to pounds. So on our star resource chart, it says that 1 ton is equal to 2,000 pounds. So we will multiply 1 ton times 2,000. And when we do, we know that we have 2,000 pounds. And then we'll take our 2,000 pounds and we can convert that to ounces. On our star resource chart, we see that 16 ounces are in 1 pound. So if we multiply our 2,000 times 16, we would figure out how many ounces we have. 16 times 2 is 32, and then if we add our 3 zeros onto the end, we get 32,000. So we have 32,000 ounces in 1 ton. Next, we see 18 quarts, and we need to convert that to cups. On our star resource chart, we can convert directly from quarts to pints and directly from pints to cups, but we cannot convert from quarts to cups. So we will look at our units. Quarts is a bigger unit, and we're moving to cups, which is a smaller unit. And when we move from big to small, we will multiply. So we have 18 quarts, and it says on our STAR resource chart that 2 pints make up a quart. So we're going to multiply 18 times 2 to figure out how many pints we have. 18 times 2 is 36. So we have 36 pints. Next, we will take our 36 pints and we'll convert that to cups. On our STAR resource chart, we see that 2 cups are in 1 pint. So we will multiply our 36 times 2 to figure out how many cups we have. 36 times 2 is 72. So we have 72 cups. 18 quarts is equal to 72 cups. Now you will solve 2 pizzazz puzzles on your own for independent practice. One is a customary length measurement pizzazz, and the second one is a customary volume measurement pizzazz. Remember to use the STAR resource chart to help you when you are converting measurements, and ask for help if you have questions.